What's happening, everybody? Today we have a very, very special guest onto the show. Some of you may know them. Some of you may know that I'm obsessed with cycling and have been for many, many years. And we literally have a sport legend in the room, and I'm super excited and super pumped to sit down with this gentleman. He knows probably more about cycling than anybody I've ever been around, and probably anybody in the sport. The man, the myth, the legend, George Hincapie.
Thank you, Andy. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited because, one, we're in your hometown. We're in Greensville, and I fell in love with this town a while ago, and I've been watching it and watching it and watching it. And it's interesting because it's kind of a small town, like, feel and vibe, but there's a lot going on here. Like, the city is really, really cool. Why did you decide this was going to be home?
So, yeah, I definitely agree with your sentiments on the town. I love this place. I first moved here just because of the cycling. We're super close to the mountain ranges out here up north, North Carolina. There's great roads, not much traffic, usually decent weather, although it's freezing cold out right now. But I wanted to be on the East Coast to get to Europe relatively easier because that's where most of my races were. And in my opinion, this is the best place to ride a bike on the East Coast. So that's why I came here originally. Now, like you said, there's just so much going on. There's great restaurants. It's a great cultural scene, great art scene. And a great place to raise a family. So I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
Nice. And I completely get the same vibe here. I was on the phone with my wife this morning. I'm like, we need to buy a house out here. This place is great. Yeah. And it has that like small town vibe.
Absolutely. Definitely. People are super friendly. Although we're getting people from all over the place moving here, was the small town vibe is still very prevalent.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so George, let's kind of rewind the clock back. For the people who don't know that you're a legend in the sport of cycling and you've been on teams that have won, multiple Tour de France's and just multiple races, that's the biggest race that most people know about. But I mean, I followed your incredible journey for a long time, and you've done some really big things in the sport. So where did your kind of cycling career start? And then where did it just absolutely go to the crazy next level?
So I grew up in New York City in Queens. Started racing. My father was big time into cycling. He was a Colombian, South American immigrant. Brought cycling over to us, made it a family sport. Kind of made us do it as kids growing up, and I started to slowly fall in love with it. Started racing in Central Park and in Prospect Park, and oddly enough, in New York, man, the scene is like super, super competitive. There's a lot of Europeans, a lot of South Americans, and it doesn't matter if you're a 12, 13-year-old kid. Like, they want to win no matter what. So I learned cycling through races like that, racing with a lot of older people with a lot more experience than I did, and just got picked up early on by the U.S. national team, and certain sponsors in New York would help. We didn't have much money, and cycling is very expensive, as you know. So I got a lot of support along the way, and was fortunate enough to get into great programs and start racing in Europe really early on, around 16 years old, and went to college for about a year. And at 18 years old, I made my first Olympic team, and then which was in Barcelona, and then signed my first pro contract, which may sound very glamorous, but it's about as far as glamorous as you can get. When I was 19, so I moved over to Como, Italy, full time, and started my 19-year pro career there.
That's awesome. It's so fascinating to me that there are so many cyclists, and if you are not a cyclist, you have to be able to suffer really, really well to even survive the sport, to train, to be able to compete and race. I mean, it's physically demanding, it's mentally grueling, but for me, it's really rewarding, and it's very similar to business. Right, especially being like an entrepreneur. Yep. You have to train these crazy hours in business. You have to be able to crash and get right back up, dazed out of your mind, get back on your bike and still race. It's the same in business. And I use a lot of these, like some of the most successful business people, like fall in love with cycling, I think because it has so many parallels to business in general.
That's a great point. Absolutely. And actually the way you said it, like and I've never thought of it that way. Like, you have to crash and get back up, which to me in cycling is instinctual. Like, I don't even have to think about it. But that's a great analogy you put there.
Yeah. So, because it's like the things in life, right? Like you'll get punched in the face. Life is going to punch you in the face. You're going to crash in life, and you're going to crash in business. I don't care who you are. No one's business career is just like da 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 da. It just goes up, right? It's there's always some kind of crash, and the crash is where you get the metal, and you get this like just grit, and you have to be able to do it again. The crazy thing with cyclists is you crash, and before you even your brain's back on, you're trying to clip back in. Like, I got to race. I got to finish. I have to hit the time clock. Like, it's this mental toughness that for me is fascinating. Like, you have to have this, like, way of disconnecting the pain and just still being able to accomplish the goal and still be able to race. And it's for the team and it's for the this. So it's almost like your brain turns off and your body takes over.
Yeah, many times. But at the same time, at that level, just like in business, there's so many talented people, and just there's arguably in my world, there's people that are way more talented than me. But when you get to, a different country, a different culture, super high level, and everybody's as good as everybody else, it's just the small differences make all the the small changes make the huge differences. So I knew that when I was growing up, I was one of the best juniors in the country, then one of the best amateurs, and then I got to Europe and I basically sucked, and I was getting my ass kicked like left and right. And it's tough, and as many times you just want to go home and maybe go back to school or figure out things to do. But like you said, just keep your focus and know that as long as you believe in yourself and you keep trying, you keep pushing, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and it's an incredible metaphor, obviously, as well, to just like life in general. How hard is it to kind of split the thing where it's like, okay, like these are all incredible cyclists. They're all strong. Everybody's strong. Everybody's trained. It's that little piece that's upstairs that's, okay, I'm not going to quit no matter what. Or because like there are plenty of times, and especially I'm a big guy, so I hate to climb, obviously, that I'm like, I'm going to turn around and I'm just going to descend and I'm going to go 60, 70 miles an hour and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the goal. Like the goal is to get to the top.
Yeah.
And I can't see anybody else anymore. So for me, the question was, how important is it to literally just have that strength to say, you know what, my body's exhausted, but the goal is to do this. And it's all like mental grit. Well,
for me, it was all about not letting my team down, being motivated to be one of the best, never wanted to let myself down, never took my dream for granted. And I knew that like that moment where I turned around on the hill and went back down, my dream was pretty much over. So that was everything that I wanted in life, and I didn't want to let anything get in the way.
Yeah, and that's it's a huge part of your career, because there were a whole lot of superstars. You were one of them, but you were a team player. Like you would suffer to these unbelievable points for the team, for the win as a team. Most people think it's a singular sport, it's an individual sport. You cannot win a race without your team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I chose early on to focus on, like you said, there's a lot more races than just the Tour de France. I focused on the classics, races like Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, the
My
Northern
favorites.
Classics, the one-day classics, where I felt like growing up in New York City really made me in tune to all the fast-paced changes and the small roads and really the chaos that goes on in New York. It happens in the Northern France and
That's
Northern
a great
Belgium
analogy.
races. There's so much stuff going on that really just made me, that was one of my strengths, was that made me stronger to be able to deal with the chaos in races. But I chose early on to focus on those races because I was really good at that, and then I was one of the best in the world at helping others win the Tour de France. So I knew sort of my place, and I was very happy, and it was very gratifying to be part of a team that was winning some of the biggest races in the world, and I could win when at races that suited me, and I can help others win at races that I knew that didn't quite suit me.
He was really good at the one-day classics and those like days where you just have to wake up and suffer your face off all day.
All day, yeah, and you can't make mistakes. It's 160 miles long. There's crashes. There's roads that go from the size of a highway to a bike path with 200 guys trying to get there at the same time. Cobblestones,
the cobbles,
steep hills. So there's just a lot going on, a lot of danger, a lot of risk. You're jumping on sidewalks many times to move up. So those are the races that really excited me, and that's what I chose to focus on.
And that's probably why you've done so well in business, because business is very similar. It's never just, hey, I'm on the highway and I'm in the fast lane doing 70.
Yeah, never.
Nope, I'm on the sidewalk, I'm on the cobbles, I'm in the dirt. I just crashed, I'm back on. I love the sport. I love the sport of cycling. And what was your favorite day of all time on the bike?
That's a good question. I would say probably, even though I didn't win, getting second place at Paris-Roubaix, a lot of people criticized me, like, why didn't you attack? Why didn't you do a better sprint? It's like, look, I put everything I had on the line. I was three of us left at the end of the race out of 250 riders. I rode the race perfectly, and the guy just pinned me at the line, and he was, Tom Boning, maybe one of the best cyclists ever, and
Agreed.
a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But days like that, I really stand out. Also, winning the national championships here in my hometown in Greenville. I have a lot of friends that knew I was a cyclist, kind of had supported my career for 10 years, but never saw me race. So to come here and race in front of them 2 times in 2006 and 2009, I won. They kind of automatically got what I did and how big it was, and really respected my career. So it was great to do that in front of friends and family.
And you have a huge career and a long career, and I could probably sit here for 6 or 7 days and just hit all the different highlights. There was a part, and it was actually in that video, Chasing Dreams, or what was it?
Chasing Legends.
Yeah, Chasing Legends. Loved that. And the soundtrack is still in my car because I play it because it gets me fired up.
It's I think, in my opinion, one of the greatest cycling movies ever. It's
Agreed.
Super cool, yeah.
That and Quicksilver, which was the one from New York too, which I like too. Completely different. Yeah. But there was that's when I really started to fall in love with this is a team sport, this is a business. There's very strategic things that you do in cycling. And there was a part of the movie where, and you guys had a stacked team. It was you and Cav and Renshaw and Michael Rogers, Tony Martin. I mean, it was a powerhouse. Yeah. And what was really cool is there was a part in the race where the wind came up and you guys split the field. And I was just like, oh, no one's going to be able to catch them. And to see that many white jerseys in the split was so fun for me. Yeah. And the way that tour ended, I get goosebumps even thinking about it. It was it's such a legendary thing. And then the last lap on the Champs, and you're driving, and there's a tight shot of you, and you're driving the whole field. It's strung out. You guys are doing 40, 50 miles an hour. And the way, was it BMC that was trying to come on the inside? Garmin. It was Garmin. That's right.
The enemy at the time.
The absolute enemy. And the way that you drove and the way that Renshaw and Cav pulled off of that last corner, I've watched that 1,000 times.
Yeah. I mean, that team, the personalities on that team was just amazing. And we had a lot of drama that tour as well. I lost the yellow jersey by 5 seconds, which a bunch of my friends, actually, we still laugh about it now, but a bunch of my friends chased me down on Garmin. So instantly, they were our public enemy number one. And it's a funny story on that last stage. Coming onto the Champs, it's basically a parade stage. The first, if it's an 80-mile stage, the first 50 miles, everybody's just kind of champagne, hugging, great tour. And one of my directors, Brian Holm, was the funniest, best director, one of the best directors ever. Comes on the radio, he's like, "Okay, guys, congratulations! You guys had a great Tour de France. We've won 5 stages at that point. Amazing, super proud of you guys. Enjoy the day, drink some champagne." If I see any of you fuckers, I don't know if I can curse.
Oh, you can curse all day long.
If I see any of you fuckers hugging a Garmin guy, I will fucking kill you. You will not make it home tonight. And we all just started laughing. But that was basically his statement of the day, because we were still kind of all mad about each other. Now we joke about it, but and I had also broken my collarbone 5 days before that.
Shit, that's right.
In a stage in the Pyrenees, so I was kind of in pain, but it was not a major crack in the collarbone, but still quite painful. And I didn't want to go get an X-ray till after the tour. So there was just a lot of drama going on that tour, and a lot of laughs. It was one of the best tours ever, in my opinion.
It was such a special race, and the way that they captured that on film was just magic.
Yeah, you should check it out if you hadn't seen it, and you're a cycling fan. Check it out. Chasing
Legends. I've probably watched it at least 100 times, but that whole entire thing was so powerful, and it was a super cool chance for me to really get to know you and your personality and the way that you were like leading the team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was, I went to that team to be one of the leaders of the team. And like I said, I had my chances at the Classics, but the tour was all about helping Mark Cavendish out and some of the other GC guys. And ironically enough, Mark was just in town last month for my Gran Fondo, which was amazing. I had Mark Cavendish here in Greenville. Just he's one of the best personalities in the sport, and
it's a really nice guy.
He loved the town as well, and he says he's going to come back next year. So it was great to have him.
I'm going to be here next year too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm 100% coming. Yeah, such a special time, and that's probably one of the most iconic photos in cycling from that last turn and the way that they go, and then you have Mark at the line, and then you have Renshaw behind him, and it's just like that summed up the tour for you guys.
Yeah, and it's just such a special finish line right on the Champs-Élysées, right in front of the Arc de Triomphe, and one of the, like you said, arguably one of the hardest sporting events in the world. Just it's a great way to end such a hard race.
You have to love to suffer, which you did, and if you've ever done anything with a broken collarbone, just try to imagine your forearms putting all the pressure of your whole body through a bike, pedaling your face off, trying to hold 50-something miles an hour and pull a whole field.
Yeah, I was going on adrenaline there for sure.
Man, well, okay, so we talk a lot about business on this podcast, but we also talk a lot about, life. And we talk about health, and we talk about it's not just all about the commas and zeros in the bank. It's about how do we give back, and I'm a dad first. Like, that's everything for me. Like, I've got these two incredible little boys. They're 3 and 5, and they're my why. Like, it's my whole entire world. And then I'm a husband. And then I take care of my health and my physical place, and then it's business for me. And it's been really cool for me to see you kind of transition from, being this humongous superstar, which you still are, but you've used that name, and you've used like your name to brand. I'm huge into branding and marketing and everything else. And please walk us through why it's so important for you to not just have like a huge team, but to have like a youth team that's crushing it. And it's so important for you to kind of coach those, like, it's like the future of cycling is your team.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, was I got a lot of support growing up in New York. My parents didn't have much money, but I had local sponsorship from a big real estate guy, actually.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Fred Mangione, who just unfortunately recently passed away, but was a huge supporter of cycling, a huge supporter of New York City cycling. And he got me, at the time when I started becoming successful at 14, 15 years old, every time I'd win a race, he'd give me $100 cash. He'd buy my bicycles, pay for my kits, which has really helped our family out a lot. And so for me, that really resonated throughout my career. And I always wanted to be able to have, a team where I can also give back as well. And we've been very successful, and we've had one of the best teams in North America, have won races in Europe. And that's still a huge passion of mine, to grow that team to the next level, to give back to the sport. And like you said, you still have crashes where the team isn't getting the same amount of support, but my goal hasn't changed. Like, I want that team to grow and to one day not only be a development team, but where it is now, it's a semi-professional team that races all over the country, sometimes in Europe. But one day I would love to have an arm of it, which is actually racing in the Tour de France, which, that's my goal right now, is to bring in these corporate sponsors that'll help us get us there.
It's going to for sure happen.
That's right.
I just think it's going to happen for sure. So you have that team. You also have the Hincapie line and like the company. And then we were just talking before about you have a new company as well.
Yeah, we have an events company. That's why Mark Cavendish was here last month. It's an event called Hincapie Gran Fondo. It was voted one of the top Gran Fondos in the country. Last year, we've got over 2,000 bike riders coming here to just north of town here in Travelers Rest. And we really get to showcase this area, which in my opinion is world-class cycling. And it's not only a cycling event. It's a food and wine event as well. We do a celebrity chef dinner the night before. And since then we've had cities calling us to do it in other places. So we're expanding next year to Fort Worth, Texas, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Boise, Idaho. So next year we'll have 4 of them. And we hope to continue to expand that event. We feel like we do a great job putting on this event, and we want to continue to grow it and perhaps bring it to other markets.
That's awesome. And they're fun. If you have not done one of these fondos, they're amazing.
You're coming next year, right?
I'm coming for
All right,
sure.
he's committed. You guys.
I'm all in. It's on film.
Yeah,
it's on
that's right.
podcast. I'm going to come, and I'm going to be a sponsor too. So
All right,
I'm going to go.
absolutely.
I'm going to go all in.
Good.
I just love the sport. I love what it's about. I love what it means. And it just taught me so much about myself. And what a lot of people don't know, and I don't think I've ever even talked about this really in public, is my coach at the time. She was one of the coaches, and her husband was one of the mechanics for the Livestrong team, which was the youth team before the Hincapie team, because you were still racing professionally.
Yep.
And they had a young rider, and his name was Ben King.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And I was talking to Ben, and he gave me this tip that changed my life. He was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
What he did is, because he had to do so many miles and train so much in zone 1 and 2 when he was bored, he would listen to these audiobooks and books on tape.
Yeah.
Well, at that time, I was riding 5 and 6 hours a day and training like to race.
Yeah.
And I started to get really into real estate investing. So I listened to these audiobooks on real estate investing, property management. Before I even got my license, before I even started this huge firm for real estate and investing, Ben King was the one that gave me the hack.
That's interesting. And Ben, by the way, had an incredible year this year. He won 2 stages of the Tour of Spain and made the World Championship team. Great guy, really, really good person.
And he's a team player too.
Absolutely.
He's been grinding for years now, and just a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he won the U.S.
Here in Greenville, he won
That's
the
right.
U.S. Championships as a young kid on Livestrong. Took off at the start,
He
which
crushed
nobody
it.
does, and got like 10 minutes. We're like, whatever. Just at the time he was probably a 21-year-old kid, and we never saw him again.
That was a really cool race too.
Yeah,
and he was from here.
He's
close
from
to here,
Virginia.
right? Virginia,
just
that's
up there.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a nice kid. And you know what? I haven't seen him since, but I'm going to tell him, like, Ben, I owe you a nice big check because you made me millions. Thanks for that hack.
Absolutely.
Such a nice guy. And there's, I would blaze through a ride.
Yeah.
I would
That's
get through
great.
an entire book.
It's actually a great idea. I'm going to have to start doing that myself.
Because I would just get all this information, and it was just like, how do I speed up this process? Because I was so excited about it.
Yeah.
And then Ben's like, well, just listen to an audiobook like I do because I get so bored on these rides. And it literally changed my life. So there's so much that you can do on a bike. It's just good for the body. It's not like running where, like, okay, at some point you're going to have to stop running.
Yeah.
It's so cool for me to like see these guys in the like 70-year-old plus crits like in my local area, and like they're still racing.
Yeah, no, you can cycle at a competitive level for a really long time.
For a long time. So one of your teammates, Lance Armstrong, he's got a lot of bit of press for good and bad and everything else. I like Lance. Like I've seen like all the different stuff. You know him deeply. How's your guys' relationship now? And then how did it get like a little weird when all of the drama was obviously going on? And where do you think the sport of cycling is going based on some of those things that kind of came out?
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, our relationship is great. We actually do our own podcast in
I've
July.
seen it. Yeah.
Called The Move on the Tour de France stages. We do it every day. We go to Aspen. Well, he lives in Aspen. I go kind of crash one of his floors and spend the month there with my family, which is actually super fun. Fun time to be in Aspen during the summer. We have a great relationship now, and it got a bit rocky when everything was going on. We had to basically air out our past, which cycling went through a time. Actually, the history of cycling is a lot like the Wild Wild West. For a while,
sure.
it was like, all right, you're going to do this, or you're not going to be really competitive.
That's right.
So it was a tough period, and there's a lot out there. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the sport has definitely changed. I got to witness that firsthand. Being on teams like HTC, which we did our own independent testing, and we were one of the first sort of clean teams. And I got to see firsthand riders winning the biggest races in the world without doping, where like early on in the late 90s, early 2000s, that wasn't really a possibility.
Everybody was doing
Basically everybody was doing it, which is not an excuse. It was an unfortunate time. I hate that I was part of that, but at the same time, I'm proud that I was able to see the sport change. And now it's like, it's funny. It's like some random dude, some like Cat 3 50-year-old cyclist gets busted for positive for something, and it makes news. Like, think about that. Like, think about any other sport, in our world where like some 50-year-old is playing basketball and he gets tested and like nobody gives a shit.
No
Like,
one
who's going
cares.
to write about it? But in our sport, unfortunately, they still write about it. So people still think that it's happening and it's the majority, which is not the majority. It's definitely the minority. And the sport is generally much cleaner than it was in the early 2000s by far.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you, especially like at the pro level,
Mm-hmm.
and it's shifted,
Yeah.
which has been fascinating for me to watch. And so to your point, there's like a 42-year-old guy.
Yeah.
He's like a Cat 3 master,
Yeah.
and he's literally just doping every single day and training like he's on the tour.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
that's what's happening now.
That's what's happening. Exactly. But it's not happening. I mean, the sport is so stringent now. The testing is just so hardcore. Like that's one thing I definitely don't miss. Like telling the testers where you're going to be every day of your life. You have to give them an hour window every day of your life. Imagine that. Like,
Nope.
I don't know where I'm going to be this weekend. Like, so it's like, it's very, very difficult. It's an important part of the sport, but I feel like cycling is tested more than any other sport, and they've done more than any other sport to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, no, and you were, a humongous part of that, and you've been a huge part of the sport for years and years and years. So there's going to be like a couple questions in closing, but what would you tell yourself? And this is kind of a cliched question, but for you, it's super important. Like, what would you go back and kind of tell yourself? Maybe like your third year as a pro. So like not your first year where like they're like these guys in Europe are training really hard and this is their livelihood and this is a very different experience than it is here in the US. And then maybe like year 3, like how could you tell yourself something a little bit different to maybe make it a little bit easier or maybe make it go a little bit faster for you as a pro? Because you had a long career as a professional, very long.
I mean, I would probably tell myself to be a bit more relaxed and like you said, I mean, everybody trains so damn hard, but not everybody rests as hard.
That's right.
And that as a young pro, like you just feel like you got to train as hard as possible all the time and rest a little bit. But the rest, like looking back now, like, okay, I'm, way less fit than I was as a professional cyclist, but I can get pretty fit when I need to and pretty fast. And as a professional cyclist, you feel like, oh my God, I'm sick. I got to train through this. But I would definitely rest a lot more than I did back in the day because your body responds pretty incredibly to illnesses and injuries, and it'll always get back to where you were or even get better once you get through your injuries and your illnesses.
It's rest and recovery, and it was fascinating to me because I'm going to be 42 in a month. Is my whole philosophy, my whole life was train.
Yep.
And now there's all this science that's like, no. Train, eat really well, sleep.
And they're all as important as each other.
Agreed.
I mean, without one, the other ones don't work. So, I mean, I just definitely did not focus on those other elements as much as I should have early on in my pro career.
No, absolutely. So if you have a whole lot of influence on a lot of young cyclists and a lot of pro cyclists now, how important is it for the cyclist to be very self-aware and like, you know what, I'm probably not going to be a GC person, or I'm probably going to be like one of the top, like, leaders on the team, or should I try to find a team that's going to let me really focus on my strengths? Like, look, I'm a classics, like I'm like built for classics. It's my goal. So how important is it for these young cyclists and young entrepreneurs to just really triple down like on their strengths and being really self-aware?
Well, I think first of all, in the early stages of pro careers, it's really important to just try everything. Like try and see what you're good at, and don't really focus on what you were good at, as a junior or as an amateur. I mean, you're getting into a whole different level of the sport. So for the first couple of years, I would just try my hand at everything and try to be the best teammate I could be. Try to win when I felt good, and then that'll start playing itself out over 3 to 4 to 5 years. When if you get lucky enough to be on good teams, they'll help you figure that out as well. So I think it's just a matter of being a team player first of all, and then focusing on your strengths as your career progresses, and just really trying to gain experience before anything. And then once you get the experience, focus on your strengths.
I agree. What is some advice that you would give a cyclist whose career, or just like a person in general, basically, whose career got cut short because of an injury or something happened. Because that can be devastating for someone who's trained, especially in cycling and everything else. You put in so many hours and you've sacrificed so much, and then it's over.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a 19-year pro career, and I probably could have kept going another couple of years, but 19 years was definitely enough for me. But if you love the sport, I would say, try to get involved in management or coaching or something that keeps you engaged and keeps you. I got a lot of friends that stopped earlier than they wanted to, but they found new passions within the sport and really helped them focus and get through the disappointments of not being able to live out the career on the bike, but being able to live it out in different ways and be positive influences in other facets of the sport.
Yeah, no, I agree, because it's impossible to turn off being competitive.
Yeah,
like
it is.
Like you're either born with it and then you nurture it, and then what? So there's ways to, move it to business where you're like, okay, now, I'm going to give back to my city. I'm going to give back to Greenville. So it can still be competitive and be able to help people at the same time. How hard was it to basically shift from, okay, now I'm a professional athlete at the absolute top of the sport, and I'm going to move that to business?
I was lucky. My brother's been my partner for when we started Hincapie Sports way before I retired from cycling. We started in 2003, so I retired in 2012. I was lucky enough to be able to just jump right into that and jump into trying to grow my team in our events company, and still do cycling events throughout the country, charity events, corporate events. So I stayed pretty busy as soon as I retired. In fact, the first couple of years was too busy. So I found a good balance 3 to 4 years after I retired where, I spend more time at home and I'm able to focus a lot on the company and my family. So I was lucky. I think if I didn't have that, it would have been really, really tough to just give up the competition. I'm super into tennis. That's where I get my competitive edge, although I suck at it. But, the shit talking is the same as I was when I was a cyclist.
Yep.
And I still ride. My goals in cycling are not being part of Tour de France winning teams are my buddies here on the weekend rides can never drop me.
Yeah, I'm going to crush them.
So, they just kind of reestablish your goals. And for me, the most part was just staying healthy. Just staying active. I don't go more than 2 or 3 days a week. If I go more than 2 or 3 days a week without exercising, I go crazy. So I exercise pretty much every day, and I think that's helped me keep me happy.
Yeah, and it was a huge point that you made, and I just want to make sure that all of you guys heard that. He was very proactive in his exit strategy for his professional career. And I deal with a lot of athletes, and a lot of them don't do that.
No.
He had a 2 or 3 year start right before the exit even happened, so there was no lull. No. I think a lot of people miss that. It's a great, great point.
Thank you.
George, this has been incredible, my friend. Thank you
pleasure.
so much. Where can all of these people find you? Find you on Facebook and Instagram and your handles. You have to go check out his journey. It is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on G Hincapie on Instagram, and from there you can pretty much find me anywhere.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, George. And you guys are going to be seeing more of this. This whole entire episode is going to be on YouTube, and we're going to be doing more with George. I'm going to be out here next year. We're going to film it. We're going to bring a whole crew.
That's right. He's coming to the Fondo. You guys heard it here first.
We're going to document the whole thing.
Awesome.
Have an amazing day, guys.